hour earlier, right? Because she's so
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, I'll just speak loudly. Okay. We are, thank you all for coming. I plan on welcome here to our meeting tonight. We're featuring a very important topic. So we have two economic professors speak to us, and one from Acquisition, one from UI, and the consensus, their consensus was what our area needs. That's the key to the I'm not going to disagree with that, but anyway. So we're finally having a presentation. So our speakers tonight, May from WSU, she's the head of the Entrepreneurial Center. Okay. Center at WSU. She will speak first, and we'll have Riebold, who is Port of Whitman. And we'll have questions about you.
Well, just between the two of us. Hi, so we're such a small all right, so I'm Mary Mays. I am the director of the Center for Entrepreneurship, as Linda said. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the center, just really briefly, just to give you some context for what the center does. And then we're going to talk a little bit about an evaluation framework we're going to apply to how we evaluate entrepreneurs and how we know if a venture might be successful, one that I like the best. And then I have makeshift time for next week, maybe get you out to see. And then I have some examples of entrepreneurs that I've worked with, and then Linus also asked me to just mention a couple of trends, but I know you had said you'd gone to the Chamber of Commerce presentation that Dean Trumbull gave today, and so she'll have fully covered the AI trend for you, so you're well versed there. I did see her static slides the other day, so. Okay. So the Center for Entrepreneurship was established in 1995, and the Center for Entrepreneurship is all things co-curricular around entrepreneurship. So everything we do outside the classroom happens in the Center for Entrepreneurship. And we also work with, we have over the years worked with students of all majors. So we're funded out of the Carson College of Business, and we serve students of all majors all across campus. And kind of over the years, I've been in this role off and on. I'm the interim director right now, but I was the director for about 11 years, and then I've been every flavor of director there is. I have been a regular director, I have been the academic director, I have been the acting director, and I am the interim director. So we are hoping to hire a new director, and so then I'll move on to a new role at college. But I have a long history of working with faculty members over the years. We had the National Science Foundation High Program, which helps faculty entrepreneurs learn how to commercialize their inventions, do some early stage customer discovery, and we work as well, again, with students of all across campus. So that's a little bit of overview. I would say too, for us, entrepreneurship at WSU is really valuable for students in terms of career advancement, because it's experiential learning. So the fact that they work on a real project, real due diligence, they have to talk to real customers, is really valuable for them for their careers. We were just talking about, I've got a number of engineering students over the years. I used to co-teach an engineering and entrepreneurship class, and many of those students have gone to very successful and respected engineering disciplines because they added a little business to their engineering education. So that's a little bit about what we do in the center. Our senior event so I would I'm sorry, is the business plan competition, and this is our 23rd year of having the business plan competition this year in 2026. And as you can see, our stats from our registration closes on Friday, so I don't have new numbers for this year quite yet. But last year, we had a lot of students involved. It's a 3-round competition. The students submit a 1-page executive summary for the screening round. The judges screen, and then we narrow down to 20 teams. If they present on Zoom, we count that after COVID. They present on Zoom and they submit a longer 4-7-page plan. And then the winners of each of those rounds advance to an in-person final day in the Cub. And it's very short tape, light organized. The judges look like you guys are right now, and they have to pitch to the live talent judges. And then all of those teams are basically they all win prize. And we have over $50,000 in prize money that's awarded to them. And we're grateful this year that SEL is one of our sponsors. We're really excited to have them involved as a sponsor as well. So that's one of our signature events. Lots of high school students are involved, which is really exciting. High school students are so enthusiastic about working on their projects. And I'm also a side role that I have. I'm working as a consultant for the College Board on a brand new AP class. It'll be AP Business with Personal Finance, and I've been involved in that since the very, very beginning, since we very first started to develop the first framework, and they do case studies, and they're doing business canvas project, and it includes personal finance. I'm really excited. They're going to roll that out formally next year, so we're really excited about that as well. So I love working with Okay, so the key question that Liz asked me to talk about today was this idea of how do we know if a venture is going to be successful, or how do you specifically said, how do we know if a founder will be successful? So the framework works for thinking about founders as well, but I think it's a little bit broader than just the founder. So the first framework, the framework is people, opportunity, context, and need. Okay. And so the first of those is people. And often people is people, because as especially as venture investing goes, it's almost always about the team. Okay, it's almost always about the people involved. But I will say as well that it's not just about the founder, but it's about who the founder surrounds himself with. So one of the things we talk about often with founders is that they need to be known. And they need to know. And so a founder, right? So a founder needs to have some industry expertise, right? That's one of the challenges of students launching straight out of undergrad is that they typically don't have industry experience. So they need to, if they're going to launch out of undergrad, they need to put some gray hair on the team. That's what we tell them. They need to find that, right? They need to find a seasoned entrepreneur or someone in that industry that really understands the industry is sort of a proxy for that kind of experience that's super important for the founder. I have a team right now that's doing an AI project as it relates to trends to help contractors to do a better job of estimating their residential construction. And so they built the student, very strong entrepreneurship student, and they have their own little office in the Commons building, which is our garage-esque collaboration space, very garage-esque, radiators are banding. But they do a great job. They've already got some revenue. They have a seasoned entrepreneur on their team. He's a seasoned contractor. We can give them real advice about what this is about. They're doing a great job. So So this picture is a good example of this category as well. So this is Chip Overstreet. I don't know if any of you've ever met or know Chip. Chip is out of Spokane. He was originally a Silicon Valley entrepreneur who moved back to Spokane. And Chip was the second CEO of a company in Spokane called Spiceology. And if you've ever bought Spiceology spices, I'll give I guess a interest note on that. I am an investor in Spiceology. So I am also personally an angel investor and an investor in their company. I first heard him pitch at Spokane Angel, and Chip just did such a fantastic job pitching that I was immediately interested in investing in this company. And since then, he took that company, he was sort of the CEO for that next stage of the company, and really helped to professionalize the company and ramp it up. And then they've since brought in a new CEO now, and so Chip's moved on to some other things. But what he does still do is consult with startups in Spokane. And whenever somebody else pitches at Spokane Angel, like recently a company called Lexica that I like a lot, and when they gave their pitch, they were like, Chip's involved with us as sort of a fractional support advisor way, and I was immediately interested. I was like, Chip for me is a reference for another team. So if I'm deciding whether I think a team is worthy of investment or interesting to me, if someone that I know who is a serial entrepreneur or is successful is involved with that team, it makes a lot of sense to me, right? At WSU, when we used to have teams that were doing things that were really highly scientific, like new drug discovery things, or I had worked with a post Katana. Do you know Katana? She's a chemical engineer. She's a postdoc in she developed countertop T cell reactor. And but whenever we would have someone else, like Joe Hardy, for example, if he sort of gave lessons to one of them, we're like, oh, they're on to something, right? That was like the scientific reference, right? And so Chip is that for many businesses for us. So it's really important that they know the experience in the industry and that they have a really robust network, right? Both in terms of fundraising and in terms of actually speaking on this. So, and Chip is a perfect example of this. It was a fantastic, still is, it's great at the really interesting fundraising story about him was that when they were raising a round of capital for the company, he had pitched Spokane, and there were a bunch of individual investors who were interested in investing in the company. And then they had an institutional investor who said, no, I want to take the whole round. I want to give you all the money you need as one investor. And so he was like, okay, great, so we'll do that. And so he went back to all of the individual investors and he said, I want to do this. And but then COVID hit. They were selling into restaurants, right? Which was really challenging. And so, but he came back to all of us. We're interested in having you invest again. And when we did, they really celebrated that. It was really great to me. But the point of it is maintaining those networks is super valuable, and maintaining relationships with people is really, really valuable as so that's a little bit about. Okay, so next is opportunity. And the important thing about opportunity that I would say is that you can't get too in love with your technology or whatever it is. You can't create a product looking for a solution, right? You have to have a market. You have to understand the market, right? And that's the thing we really want them to get out of the building and talk to customers early. And to understand the customer workflow before they even tell them about the product, right? Many of us, we want to ask, don't you love my cool new thing I created? Of course you do, right? And you're going to ask them leading questions. But we want to know is what's working, what are your pains, right? What are your pains? What are jobs to be done, right? We really want to understand at the root what the customer's trying to solve before we create a product to solve. And so that's kind of the first step in opportunity. And then beyond that, we really want to look at assumption testing, right? As soon as we can do that, and really create a really great team. In fact, so this is one I got today. I'm a little hesitant to try it, but I promise that I will. So this is one of the teams in my class. I have a company that's called Mushroom, which is it's a mushroom. Like a yerba mate mushroom tea thing.
Who knows about you?
Somebody who knows about it. Yes, so I have, there's a food science student on this team. So that's really important because the food science student has access to the clean lab at WSU where they can actually carefully create and test something like this. And she also has a context which we taught at the Apple, which gave them some natural fruit essence stuff. See, I don't know anything about crafting a tea product. I know enough to ask lots of questions and not enough to. So, but what matters is that they have sense. This is just a bunch of entrepreneurship students. It's like less but I promise them I'll try. So the point of that is that they created that really early. They're going to test, they've tried it, they drink it, you know, first, they've done, they're really the chemical knowledge as well. So that's an important thing, right? Is the solution needing to competitive? They're in a pretty competitive market size for this. So there's a lot of crowded supplements on the market, right? There's also I am not the consumer for this. I'm not the target market. So it's taking me a little bit. Some of you are probably more knowledgeable about the supplements market than I am. But to the point that when you're pitching something, they have to be able to communicate it to an audience that doesn't understand it. Just like when Ramona had to explain to me the T-cell reactor, right? They have to be able to explain this, right? Okay, so, and we also want to know how big this, right? Which can be challenging, right? Especially in small communities, it can be challenging to find a market big enough to stay small. So context, right? So context matters a lot. Like this answers that question, why now? So why is this a good time for this company? What about the industry is changing? What about all the things we talk about trends in AI, right? I had a great call this morning with a successful former student entrepreneur. I'm also an investor in this company, and he was just saying, you know, AI has brought great, they were really early in AI, but it's brought lots of challenges for them as well, especially in terms of fundraising, because there's lots of expectations around speed now, that they're expecting a lot more speed in terms of growing the company faster and doing it with really small headcount, expecting a really big return. And so there's a lot of pressure to just sped up, right, the expectations for what a company should be a short period of time. Okay, so 4 is creativity, right? And so here we're really thinking about financial aspects. Does it make sense? Can we make money, right? Who are the potential funders? The thing that I tell my students that often they mix up on this is that you have to fit the type of entity with the type of funding. So I'll hear them say, oh, I'm going to raise around venture capital with an LLC. It's like, well, you can't do that. That's not how it works, right? And so you can have multiple members of your LLC, you can have people involved, right? But you can't raise shares, you can't sell shares, right? And they have to understand how all that works, and the parts have to fit together, and they have to make sense. So that's the thing, especially when they're crafting financial statements for the later rounds of business line competition, they have to create other full financial statements for pro farmers for 5 years. And they have to be able to justify their assumptions for the things that they create. And so and the parts of the financial statements have to fit together, right? They can't be separate entities, right? They have stuff flow through. I was just talking to we have our hospitality, one of our hospitality classes this year, they're all going to do business plan competition, which is really exciting. They have a fantastic instructor, Jessica, who does have her own little startup. And so she's some great advice when we're talking about financial statements. And the other thing with that I tell them is they have to be industry specific, right? So the hospitality students have to understand what are expected returns in hospitality, right? One of them is in senior living. One of them is going to try and actually build or buy a 55 plus community, build new. So that's really complicated finance, right? To do something like that, right? Some of them are creating apps that help with training in hospitality, right? But they have to, the understanding of the financials has to fit with the industry. You have to know what the industry multiples are expected, what are the expected revenues. It has to be correct, right? The judges will know right away that you, or anyone invested in a company will know right away that you don't know what you're talking about. You don't have right industry specific knowledge back to the know and you know, right? You have to know what's expected in the industry. So that's super important. So that's my framework. I'll click next. So again, I already talked about trends. How are we? Minutes in? Yeah. Okay. Okay, perfect. We want to go to that. Obviously AI is the biggest trend we're talking about a lot. I know Dee Campbell, she gave a great talk about that. She's an MIS professor, so she's really passionate about AI. And I will say our department here in entrepreneurship, management information systems and entrepreneurship, Rob Cross, our current partner, has also been really instrumental in talking about kind of small minutes with AI, right? Even in our classes, what are early things we can be doing to have students using it or understanding when they shouldn't be using it, when they should be using it, how they can use it to accelerate their projects, how they can also some of the stuff around that. Always be checking it, right? And it has some great visuals about trains running over people in that presentation that I always think is good. So that's the other thing is we're seeing the rising side hustles, right? People doing a venture while they still have a job. And some of them will end up growing that to the extent that they eventually need a full-time job. But sometimes they won't. Sometimes they'll keep venture going on. We have a board member who has a drum company all well with some of the big tech companies as well. So he never decided to do tech companies to do that. So we're also support students who are doing that kind of those kinds of projects as well. And trying to help them legitimize those side hustles, right, to get the proper business license that they need, or if they're cutting hair to make sure they have their cosmetic license, those kinds of things. So that's one of the areas we're really trying to help students as well. So those are kind of the biggest things around AI, but I'm always learning things. The thing I love about what I do is I get to keep in touch with all my former students who have gone on to start ventures and work in ventures, and I get to hear back from them about things that they're finding challenging, about my student today, kind of the challenges of raising capital in this environment right now. And then some of them that are in other spaces that maybe aren't as hot. So I want students who use their sleep apnea device that you developed with his father using this. And that's been a pretty challenging medtech challenging space to raise capital in. And so talking about some of those challenges. But I would say our center is really trying to help connect the innovation together. So if we know somebody who's providing help in that space, who has expertise in that space, providing subject matter experts to them, and in addition to mentors and connections to them. So I think there's just a couple of examples of one. So this is the one I actually talked to this morning. His name is John Riebold, and his company is called Nomad Go, and they do computer vision AI. They're really movers in computer vision. And the great story about this company is when John was the idea was to create digital ads on an iPad that students wore in these plastic cases. And they put the iPad in the plastic case and they walked around campus and they had digital ads running on their laptops. And he partnered with the computer science students. And over time, they got really good at the computer vision part of this. And they could localize ads. So he went down to that place and said, hey, check it out. And then they got really good. We get track impressions. Who walked by? How many people walked by? Just like you could on your website. And so eventually all this morphed into what is now a large and legitimate company. But the point was that to the people earlier, that it wasn't attached to the technology per se. We wanted to have scalable business. So they've gone through a lot of pivots and a lot of iterations over time to be where they are today. And they just recently secured a contract with every startups now. They do all computer vision for their supply chain management. So they're actually considering themselves supply chain tech. So that's where they did. But we're really proud of them. He has great stress to get around a capital. He did bring in a seasoned entrepreneur as a co-founder early on, really came to launch that company right now. So this is one you maybe have heard of, right? If you saw the news that SEL acquired a piece of technology that came out of WSU, and Georgina Lynch was a speech and hearing pathologist out of Spokane, and originally the focus on sort of the origins of that. So it was two undergraduate students, Lars and Chandra, who is a Raleigh resident now. Went to WSU from home, and yeah, he is. And yeah, they're all on science. And so, and TJ Riebold, and TJ was neuroscience, and Lars was bioengineering, and they worked with Georgina to help advances, and they did really well in a couple of different business plan competitions. And then eventually they both moved on to other pursuits, and Georgina continued to work on it. And ESTA required the technology which enables early detection of autism spectrum disorder, right? And they're still working through the FDA rules for that, but SEL acquired the technology and Georgina works for SEL now, which I think is a real success story. That's a whole new division for them, medtech, but we know they're great at building devices and hardware. And so we're really excited about that for the community, see where we took it back to the member, we get some students with it to kind of help grow it, and then she continued with it, and now it's core of the community. So that's one that's a good example of kind of putting it all together. Our scientific, that's Matt McCluskey's company. So yeah, Matt out of physics, they were really involved in Riebold, which is the National Science Foundation program. They did that, and then he hired a CEO to help them formalize that. That was another great one. And then this one as well. So this one was spun out of the hydrogen program now at WSU. So that's Jacob Beachman's lab. Jacob Beachman's done a fantastic job for Jacob at spinning out startups out of his lab. And so this one is for some undergraduate students. They formed a company that they created hydrogen protein fuel tanks originally for UAVs, and then they sold that to Plug Power, and a couple of them do work for Plug Power still. And then this year I helped evaluate the commercialization gap fund request for WSU, and there was another one coming out of his lab for that one. So he's one of the faculty members we really value a lot in terms of his ability to encourage graduate students to spin things out of his lab. So those are, that's the last. Oh, that's exercise big time, but we don't. So that's good. But those will just give you a kind of a little bit of a flavor of what I would say are some of our successful founders and what it takes to have a successful venture, and then we can see that we work with a really wide variety of entrepreneurs and founders. So, want us to one and then two questions together, or do you want them to ask questions for me? Or we can do questions together. Sure. So we both go in. Oh, that's on my laptop. I have it on my That is fun, yeah. Glasses over there. Yeah. Where's Reese? Keep it up, close.
Okay, well, thank you for having me here. This will be a build on the entrepreneurship. That's okay. This will build on the entrepreneurship that's going on at the college. We're trying to continue that cultivation and keep those businesses in Whitman County. So the Port's mission is to create economic development. We also support multimodal transportation and on-water recreational opportunities. So just a high-level overview. Our focus is really on bringing the return on investment to taxpayers. So for every dollar that's invested right now, we're creating $8.56 of revenue. And we really do that through the businesses that locate on our properties and the work that they do. We have 8 properties. I got count my dots because 9 properties now in Riebold County. You can see 4 of them are on the Snake River. One includes the recreational park, Boyer Park Arena. And then we have the Pullman Industrial Park. We have the airport outside of Colfax that's in the middle of the Port of Whitman Business Air Center. We just acquired a property in Colfax behind the high school. We have one in St. John. Both of those are brownfields projects where we're doing some cleanup for reuse of the property. And then up by Tico, we have an industrial park out breaking ground on and Oakville Mill. So one of our recent entrepreneurial successes is actually a growth of the business. So Entrepreneurship tonight is outside of Pullman near the blinking light intersection at Hawaii Road, and they expanded to our industrial park at Central Care. So we're focused on retention, expansion, and of course growth of startups. So this is the growth of a company that's already existing in Whitman County. We constructed the infrastructure for this company, so we put in a rail line to the property that we're leasing, as well as a well for them. And then they built all of the tanks and everything you see there, and they're doing ag inputs. So they bring in fertilizer with the riddle, and then they add to it, and they do custom inputs for farms. And then marine engine flood power. So Proteum originally leased property out at the airport from the port. When they were purchased by Flood Power, Flood decided to keep that research facility out there. They put about $1 million into remodeling the building, the one down on the right. And since then, they've expanded to another lot where they built a testing facility. And I think they're going to have a ribbon cutting in the next few months, so you can watch for that and learn more about what they're doing out there. But it's exciting to see those entrepreneurs start at college, want to stay in Whitman County, and find a way to do it. Pullman Industrial Park is another great example of this, and you might recognize some of the businesses that are out there. And the port purchased the property in the 70s, put in the infrastructure, the roads, the water, the utilities, and then began by selling property to Schweitzer Engineering Laboratories, obviously a huge expansion there. That's companies that are supposed to work, but Peter Group, another company that's really excelled there. Of course, Mary Solar's winery is over there. We have about 7 lots left available in that park, and 3 of those are reserved for a tech transfer facility that we're just starting to put together funding for. So we did a feasibility study about 3 years ago, trying to find out, what infrastructure is needed here to keep more companies in Whitman County to help the next SEL grow here. And as we did that, we really learned that one of the barriers is that there's a lot of very technical work being done in the labs, but there's no place to do that next pilot scale testing. And so sometimes it sits on the shelf because that barrier is too hard to overcome, it's too expensive, or I have to move somewhere else to do it and I don't want to. And so that's where the idea of building a facility that already has that infrastructure in place came from. So the county has committed $1 million to the project. The Department of Commerce has committed $2 million. The port has a commitment in there, and then we have a pending application with the Economic Development Association at the federal level for about $14 million. And this is a quick video. So we've done the preliminary engineering. for this project. And right now we're doing the design and engineering, not us, but a company named RGU. And so this will just kind of take you through a little bit of what the building might look like, and show you some of the spaces inside. We've had 2 round tables that fed into this design concept, bringing in folks from the mechanical engineering department, the bioengineering, and also some of the startups from the lab. So there will be conference rooms within the facility, some shared spaces, obviously bathrooms, utility closets, and our office is on the main floor, and offices on the 2nd floor. The actual lab spaces are 6 of them. You can see they span 2 stories, so they're high bay, and we're going to put in infrastructure for wastewater systems. Lids, we won't put in the lids itself, but we'll have the ventilation there in place so that researchers can bring in their own goods. Ionized water systems, cooling loops, so many things that I don't even know what you mean, honestly. I could get you this. And then they have office spaces connected to each one of those labs. So it's about 33,000 square feet the way it's designed right now. We have a lot of input from the startup companies. Yeah. By the end of this year, it will be fully engineered. So you can see the back, they'll have the roll-up doors, and then we're going to have space outside to store some of the specialized chemicals and containers. Now we'll go right up to the industrial park. So when we think about filling this facility and what the port's role is in providing infrastructure, we've had for the last 2 years an infrastructure coordination event. So it's not a business kind of competition, but we do bring in some of the startups who are farther along that path. So the Cryo Cowboys, Katano came this last year and spoke. We had Carrot AI, as well as Dr. Beachman's down there in the bottom corner, and then Cypress. They talked about their technologies and really explained to some of our stakeholders in the room what is needed and why a facility that's ready for them would be beneficial in their next steps. Because many of them want to stay here on the police to continue their business. If you haven't been to Niagara Lab, Dr. Leachman gives tours, I think, almost every Thursday, and they are fascinating. I probably could go 6 more times, and I might be able to tell you one thing I learned. It's very technical, but they do a good job explaining it in small bites, and it's just fascinating the things that are going on there. So if you are interested at all, I'd be happy to connect you. Really is excited to bring the community into that lab and to have folks understand what's going on right here. He's a big advocate of the tech transfer project, and as Marie said, a big advocate of startups and growing businesses. So the port serves as the ADO for Whitman County. Every county has an ADO that's designated by the county commissioners. And as part of this role, we do trainings, which Dave is supporting the training at the chamber. We're happy to have that opportunity. Sometimes we support trainings that we facilitate ourselves, otherwise we work with other partners like chambers. We have a monthly economic development informational meeting, or I guess bi-monthly every other month, and we invite our stakeholders, elected officials from all of the small towns, other economic development partners, the business community to come. There's usually a presentation, short presentations on either a new business that started up or infrastructure that's needed. The county comes sometimes and does a presentation on what the road projects are for the year. One of the main purposes of those meetings is to collaborate and share sort of information that comes from the life experience or how to support businesses. Businesses, but really we try to act as a connector. We're trying to be business advisors. Quite a few projects going on, so we're not the best ones to fulfill that role, but we do refer to the SBDC and other folks depending on what's needed. So then just as a little bit of a side note, some of the other port projects that we're doing, which really hope to future entrepreneurs, a little more unique than the tech transfer, but we were gifted the old scale mill by Ethiopia. The community worked together to fundraise and purchase that. We received $1 million grant from the Community Economic Revitalization Board in January, which is going to allow us to put a new roof on that and do some stabilization. So we might be new windows, but they would say that they're going to be forever windows, so we don't have to use them. We are going to evict the raccoons and cats and birds and try to shore that thing up so it'll last longer, and then bring utilities to the property. So right now there's not any water. And the Tico Industrial Park that's outside of Tico is about 15 acres. It used to be an old egg airstrip. It won't be used for that purpose anymore. Tico has an airport, so there's not a need there. But we are going to develop it into 5 sites for industrial businesses in the north of the county. And that construction means that kind of response. So by the end of the year, we should have that ready. I mentioned the St. John property, that was a brownfields cleanup, so this is kind of a new area of focus for the port. We got an EPA assessment grant, which allowed us to look at different properties in the county that could be cleaned up for reuse. This one was nominated by the Whitman Hospital Medical Clinics. It was a location where they wanted to build a new clinic, and they looked into it previously, but found evidence of petroleum in the groundwater, so they were advised by the legal counsel, walk away, this is what you do. And so they nominated and said, would you purchase the property, would you do the cleanup, and then sell it back to us so we can build a clinic? And that's where we're at right now. I think the demolition of that building, not the big one, but a small cafe there, happens next week. And then the cleanup will start by June, and we're hoping by the end of the summer to have that ready to turn over to them so they can start their next steps. And then the property in Colfax that I mentioned was originally being explored for a future child care center. As part of our due diligence in purchasing that property, we did environmental site assessment work, and it used to be a seed treatment facility, so there was contamination on the property. The contaminants that were there were a little more significant, so the cost of cleanup is a lot higher. Some of them need to be transported to Utah and incinerated, and it's expensive to move. So we've applied for funding with the EPA, and we're going to submit an application with Ecology. It's about a $6 million cleanup project, and then we can continue to see if it's feasible after it's cleaned up to construct a child care center there. But this property is right in the high school, and so it's a good cleanup project, regardless of its end use, because right now it is underutilized, it's adjacent to a significant community center in Colfax. Another thing that we're working on is applying for opportunity zones. So across the state, I think this slide shows some of the opportunity zones that were designated in round 1. We're going to apply in round 2. Opportunity zones, once they've been designated, they allow businesses that invest in that area, so that build a business or model or invest any capital, to have a tax credit. So we're looking at 2 zones that we have to apply for in Whitman County. One's in the north part of the county, so we'll overlap our Tico property, and the other one you can see is just east of Pullman, and that will be cover the hospital Pullman Airport and a property that we're looking at in that area. So it would be a great recruitment tool, and then for businesses that want to grow here, any businesses coming out of the tech transfer center, they have some incentives that they can offer to investors to build and to stay in Whitman County. The state has to designate those, and I can't remember, I think they can do up to 30 this round, so we're hoping that we can get at least one. And this is just kind of an overview, because in addition to the real estate and the economic development, you can see pictures of the Snake River Family Festival, the balloons there, and the people. We do try to promote our river system and the commerce that moves up and down it, especially Central Ferry, Alberta, and Wilma, all three of those port sites owned by the Port of Whitman. And we have businesses moving grain and moving inputs up and down the river of those sites.
You do a lot. So, anybody have any questions for either of our speakers?
So we do events downtown. I love the way they.
So you potentially, if there are students who are due graduate, so because the finals are April 30th, and that's the Thursday of the week before finals week. We have a new name for it. Anyway, so it's that Thursday. So then many of them graduate. So if we have students who aren't seniors, who are juniors, who come back, right, then they definitely could come and talk about what they're working on. We're trying to get students to do these things earlier, to try things earlier, right?
More people.
Yes, no, 100%, yes, and they can talk about it, and they can talk about working on these projects in their job practice, because now they really want them to have skills earlier. So.
Where I can't figure out is the small. I know three grade ones that.
Yeah.
I can't figure out how to.
Yeah.
Where I don't want to. That's hard. I think a lot of business startups come wanting to know where can I get a grant for my business, and I just think that's the best path that you can go. I think this is something that so they have a tech transfer system or facility. They really want to work with the college and create an ecosystem. Just how the angel investments that are happening. So yeah, I think there's that create enough synergy here between the hyper lab, between stuff that's going on in the university. Here to have investors maybe once a year come to an event. I don't know. Maria and I just met. So I'm hoping that we can kind of continue that conversation, but that is something we're working on the infrastructure side, but we recognize that what will really make that facility ongoing successful is a system that supports this flow through all of these different stages of business. So I had one professor that came to a round table and he's like, we can't fill this. But I think other people may not. Yeah, but you want to fill it with just research that stays there forever. She wants businesses to move out. You know, we really want to sensitive to trying to create that ongoing ROI for the taxpayer. You're building up like a smart meter.
Yeah.
The angel investor is only large amounts there.
So the way it works is that you have to be an investor to be an investor. It's an IRS designation. And you can get an usually you just certify when you invest that you are. But it's either through your income, or your individual or as a couple, or your net worth, or now they have a new way that you can be invest based on your education or certification. So if you have like financial certifications, like a Series 7 or a Series 63, right? Financial advising certifications, even if you're younger, you can hire investor. So once you get a big credit investor, because they want to be sure you either know you're doing it or you have enough capital to lose it. Basically, that's right. That's just a few. They're all high risk investments, right? So, so typically a company, you would need to be formed, it's typically some kind of corporation, right? I mean, there are ways people privately invest still, right? But if you want to do a most of investments, or you have to the most common for that investment now is either a safe agreement, which is a simple agreement for future equity, or a note, or a safe agreement, right? And so, so typically you'll invest in the early stage of that company, starts out as debt, eventually converts to equity at some designated trigger event in the future. And so people will do that individually, completely individually, like the pitch it, we'll get into as an association. You can be a member of that. Then you hear they have lunches maybe 4 times a couple of small companies, right? People pitch those. And then they can choose to individually invest, right? They just go up to the investor after. And they also have a fund, sometimes they have some funds that people can invest in. The minimum is pretty high. Like he does the due diligence and invests in companies fund, right? There's other angel alliances. There's one in Seattle, there's one in Zoo, right? There's some that are just given a link that do investment ventures. And they have different kinds of due diligence structures. So whether their members do some due diligence, or there's lots of different ways to do these. One of the candidates that we brought for the new executive director has a lot of experience. But it doesn't have to be a lot of capital. Like sometimes it depends on the company, how they say how long they want the cap table is and how many individual members they want on the cap table. But sometimes it's as low as $25,000. Take your money, but not return it back. It's not like where you're a venture capital fund, right? They raise the fund and then they deploy their capital. But it's really risky. It's not risky. It's asset class, right? If you do it well, you make a lot of investments, and you're sure those are the odds, right? Same with the venture capital fund. They're expecting one of the investments in that fund to return, and it's investment on the entire fund. So one of the things we're seeing right now that is a challenge in venture capital investing is that the fund sizes are so big that they have to deploy a lot of capital in every investment in order for the fund to return that 10x. So fund size largely determines the strategy of the VC fund. So sometimes even if a firm likes the startup, they won't be able to deploy that capital. Firm doesn't need enough. It doesn't want that big amount of capital. So that's also one of the challenges. If the firm is too small, they don't want enough capital to invest because they can't make a return. So we're really working to build a network engagement. So the venture capital investment in Salt Lake, and he's been great about just referring some of our folks to smaller funds, or just even working with them a little bit on their diligence, even if he can't invest in them. So we can also do some of that. We get some feedback from family offices are also another source of capital. So they're just really, really high net worth individuals and families that have an entire financial management system for their personal wealth. And so they're also a source of capital.
How does entrepreneurship in there, like, how does that affect the, like, there are people that are gonna make a ton of money with it. They can do like having the library house, things like that. Does he actually see any of the just entrepreneurial support?
Well, I think if they locate in the community, yes, because then they would be, you know, so I our 4 properties that we have in the industrial park that are, they would have to build a facility there. So if we can retain them, if they actually go to business in Portland, that was a real positive benefit on that. Creating, I think that the work that you have happening in college and all these startups is a little bit part of that, creating the ecosystem that spins up enough, you know, those 10 people to get the one that actually makes it and decides I also want to. So I think all of it's important, but we have to have all of it. We have to have, you know, people cultivating that. We have to have a place for some of them to actually grow and do work beyond just the lab or the beyond the garage or all the garage spaces.
Right.
So to do that here is where I need to help us. If we do grow, we have to have land also and available for them to lease, purchase, build their business. If we don't have those, if one of those things are missing, it's not very good. So if we can make a big impact, we get all the way to business here.
Point what I entities that hire people. And my first students that are hired someone, I was like, right? That's really the goal, right? I was in the library on my way over at the library, and I was just like, right? Like, very touched. I just love to see that. I think that's something right? Ways that we can be. Right? I know, I think they were effective in figuring out that what we had learned too, some of the early, there have been lots of iterations of this and feasibility studies that the tech transfer office did one way back a while as well. And the wet lab space was really the place where we could see this, because they need, if you're a faculty member and you create something and you want to spin it out of the university, it helps to get out of your lab because it creates intellectual property right. The university has a claim on your intellectual property, state resources to create that. So, you know, we really like to, sometimes you can rent that space in the lab, and it's complicated. So it's much cleaner if you can get out of one of the university buildings and onto some space that they're creating. So I think that will really help some of those. But having a connection to the broader funding offices will also really help. There was another one that they accounting engineering faculty that went to J. Brown's to their company to Central Valley as well, and they sold it to Intel. It's called 3D for You. I don't know if you remember that, J. Brown's, J. They created a 3D like camera that was amazing for sports, like this really cool. Yeah, they sold it to Intel, so it was really successful. Except for that, but they've got to see how to do that. So that's what we're trying to help more companies do that and stay here. Oh,
Generically, here in this Idaho. more business friendly right now. I think it does probably really depend on what your business is. We just created a business that was in Lewiston and had a couple different properties there. And better for their business to consolidate and go into the Port of Whitman on the Washington side of the border. So they're bringing 25 manufacturing Washington. And with the extra space, they're able to grow the I think that's where some of those things, I feel like it's a little about. But I think as a region, we just have to focus on how do we, even if the business, even if we do all this work and economic transfer in Moscow, yes, this record property tax dollars, there's no economic benefit to them. But if they live in Moscow or if they live in Pullman, there's a lot of cross-communication. So whether try to pretend like that or better to just go, how can we just keep people in our region? And that will, I think, create growth from this side. I think there are certain things. It's a little hard to do. I would guess the rest of it. But I also know that if you were someone looking for a job, you might prefer to hire a lawyer in Washington. So there's a trade-off.
But there's that impact. So I was wondering,
Back to that sort of specific point, right? So I think what we're really seeing that they identified that it's better to be non-creative space, but there are other industries where they're looking for, skilled labor, tech talent, right? Where I mean, you think about companies that have been that grown in Washington, like not necessarily County, but you think about like people always think like some other factories way out there in the West, or like Boeing and Microsoft and all those fantastic companies that have come out of our state. So I think if you're really looking for the state that has a lot of really fantastic, highly educated workers, people that have talented tech workers, I mean, we're still a fantastic state like that. So,
I came in here, I kind of thought entrepreneurship was it's really not. I mean, like, so there's retail spaces and cultivating. That's not, those are close.
We define entrepreneurship as the pursuit of opportunity without resources.
Wow.
Right?
That is a good.
Right? And that's actually the Harvard definition of entrepreneurship. So it applies to all kinds of things, right? You say, I can tell my students they're being entrepreneurial when I say, but I want to go to college. I don't have those resources right now, maybe, but how can I get them to it's a very simple process to say, I want to take this to this. I don't know everything right now. I don't have all the people I need. I don't have all the people skills. I don't have all the knowledge, but I can get them. I can grow them. I can network. So I'm going to keep moving something forward. I don't have it all right now. So doing something rather than waiting till you know it all to do it.
Expansion, but like the Oakdale property, okay, you don't know that's been. Okay, but if it's like retail space, that's not. I mean, you won't know like that.
Right that being south for retail. Once we have funding put together to actually do all the interior renovations, and I think 90 the number is, ideally we find an anchor tenant, someone that creates steady base. So really love to see some sort of cafe, some gathering space right now is this attractive coffee shop that I do. 3 months when I've been there. It's hard. And then there's the grocery store, which I think that's fantastic that they have a grocery store that's open because there is one in Tico. There's also lights off. But it's a really social place to, you know, go to the coffee shop here. So there's for a community space and some sort of, I don't numbers start to drive the traffic counts that Marshall has going around. It's not just the WCA. Right, sometimes way through range, we see a lot of trucks coming in there. So there's a lot of there's a lot going on in that really small area. It also has some of those similar actions. Really, my hope would be that in doing some of these improvements and or the we'll hear about that it gets out to the right entrepreneurs and always or the person who goes, I don't really need a return on investment. I just want us to have the same thing. A few of those types of people come together. Karen has a lot of she wants to
You should talk to Judy. So when Judy first opened the armory, right, way back in the day, we had that whole first floor was, we did a kind of a town collaboration on that, and one of my very first student startups had spun out for a year, worked on theirs, and they had an office down there, and that first floor was all incubator space, and we had the EA had had meetings there like this, and we had startup meetings there and some things, and it was great, but they were the kind of non-scientific founders to rent the space and use it, so she developed it for apartments now. Mostly, there's a few, right? There's a few businesses in there, but not very many. So, but I always just encourage people to at least talk. It's not to say you can't do it, but at least to know the history of who tried, and actually Judy would be great to share some of the things that she found from that, or you know.
So like I tell my home, inside the city limits of property, you guys might know something. But I mean, it's kind of, we're looking at the city to help retail space.
I don't know what the city is.
The city doesn't, just the city doesn't, but like if I want to open. I'm not just working with the city.
Yeah, I know.
Been aware they want to do that. Well, we won't name it.
Right.
But there's a couple and they're all owned by the same people actually. Because it's better to take a loss than to have a going. Yes.
Why?
I've been using Android forms for years. And it comes up every candidate form that you have to do this, and that's the last thing. Everybody knows. Next to where? Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's good.
Is that where is that the quick going?
Oh,
Oh,
yeah. You know what it's called?
That's good. Find the spot that's small. Especially when they're interested, you know, they are like so driven, they're so driven. The lumberyard was good.
Can you tell me one last question? I read a lot about fire. Do our small towns have?
Yes, so at this point, I think every Farmington might not have fire resilience if it was building that, so the Port built fire resilience in specifically in Garfield, Palouse, Riebold, Visalia. Coleman already had fire companies competing to do that. Hope in town, independent telephone company that built fire signals, and then Dusty, Endicott, Cross. There's another independent telephone company that built fiber to the home. Built in Plain City, Walden. And Steptoe. So yeah, I think almost everything. Port did get, we wanted to bring fiber out to the property and we had fiber to go. And so we got another last round of grants from to build fiber to home along out to people and then doing Sunshine Road and I like to smell it alley and whatever that road is right behind the Pullman Industrial Park. We're going around that and light that whole section because they kind of got left out. I'll be able to fiber to home. So really now we're kind of down to fiber to the farm. Get to that, probably the satellite provides for sure the most cost effective option. The service makes things some people get it straight forever, it's easy to get it straight down to that. So we own a lot of fibers and we lease it out. Okay, it's like 25 companies that lease fiber and they provide it. So we just sort of hold the dark cable, we don't own any electronics. We have a couple different publication facilities with fiber and rates, and then we use our rack space and the ISPs come in and service providers and install it in the racks.
Still have a degree, so we still have a major and a minor, and then we have a number of different certificate programs across campus as well. So there's one for business and art, so they have some students in fine arts that are involved in our program. They take some art classes, and then we have one with so there's there's a biomedical track in neuroscience, and then they also have a certificate program in neuroscience. We have a few students in that, and then we have partnership with engineering. So that program kind of waned for a little bit, and then now we have a new director, or the new director who's in Canada Engineering Faculty, and he will teach the engineering capstone, the multidisciplinary engineering capstone, and then those students will also take new venture planning, new venture launch from us. Those are classes I teach right now, and I will teach them forever. But so they'll take those 2 classes as well, and they'll get it's not a catalog certificate like it will be, but they'll get a certificate for participating in that program. And then we'll together do like workshops and things like that. So even right now, the students that are in the Commons building that have a dedicated office space are mixed, because the most effective teams are the ones who have computer science students who actually do the programming with AI, and then the students who are scrappy and make sales balls, right? And do all that, right? So the more they can build multidisciplinary teams, the more effective they are. Like this team with the your shroom thing, right? Having the student, right? Having the student on the team was science was really that. I mean, it just yeah. So that's what we're really working to do that cross campus collaboration, and I would say most of the deans are really supportive of that. Debbie's right, and Connor's dean is right. We showed Debbie about something. So we're really excited about that. We want to have more price competition to incentivize students to do those. Like for a while, we had one and at Tech over some of the friends have given us. And so we want to continue to have some of those thematic prizes that incentivize students to majors to
We should probably call this.
Yeah. Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting. Very.
Yeah, I wasn't aware.
I figured out for years. Tried to see here and there. Now the social media seems to be more informative and.
I know, when I first got here, because I didn't listen to sports where I grew up.
Yeah, but yeah, exactly.
And why do I pay taxes to that? And it says, how much money do they actually have? And it's like, wow. And I really am so excited about the whole round. It's just really. Yes.
I think that's the least care on my table.
I bet she knows what's a town and what's a city.
Yeah, it's been great guys to go. You didn't always have it.
Yeah, they've had it for a long time, lawyer, but I think the way it's managed has changed in the last. Since it was really fancy. I know it's kind of confusing because it says Port of Central Ferry, Port of Whitman, so we're trying to do some signage that says owned and
Branding,
operated.
Yeah, I think we did that too.
I know somebody looked up all the towns in Whitman County and they said, well, what under the water? Because, yeah, was a town. That. So, yeah. But it's, yeah, because when we did our, we're doing our contest right now, one of the things we talked about the special districts. What do you do? I mean,
We'll keep working on it.
yeah, and no, we gotta, yeah, people gotta know what sport does.
Yeah.
And the thing is, it's not just along the river.
Right.
It started
Yeah.
as
Yes, I don't, I've heard the snow is great. We're staying this year at